They had a name for me, the disappointment. Not screamed in a fit of rage, but whispered in the chilling silence of a family dinner. It was in the way my mother's smile lit up for my brother, Ethan, like he held the sun in his hands, while her gaze on me was heavy with the shadow of my failures. When I walked away from the fire department after 17 years of service, after nights stained with smoke and the searing kiss of third-degree burns, they never once asked why. They didn't care to know how many times my own lungs had burned for air just to save someone else's child. The family verdict was simple and swift. She just couldn't handle it. I hadn't gone to medical school. I hadn't married a senator's son. My shoes were never polished and my charm didn't sparkle at cocktail parties. My brother Ethan had all of that and more. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering became a meticulously staged play where he was the star, and I was the ghost in the wings. But they had no idea, did they? They never knew that a part of me never left the inferno. It lived deep in my bones, a phantom heat that rose with every distant siren. Every scar was a map of a story they refused to read. And so I became invisible. Until one night. It was at a hospital fundraiser, a gala I wasn't even formally invited to, a world of glittering chandeliers and quiet influence. His boss, a man named Liam Henderson, turned to me mid-conversation, his eyes narrowing as if he'd seen a ghost. "Wait a second, were you at the Blackwood Ridge fire? The one in 2017. I froze, my champagne flute hovering midair. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're the one. You pulled me out. I remember you yelling through the mask to stay with me. That was you." The ballroom fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Every fork paused on its way to a mouth. I saw Ethan's face drain of color, my parents blinking in utter confusion. And then Mr. Henderson said it, his voice ringing with a clarity that cut through the polite murmurs. "She saved my life." And I later heard the state gave her a medal and a $300,000 award for her bravery. You never mentioned that. That was it. That was the spark. Not from a roaring fire, but from a single, devastating word of truth. My name is Chloe Morgan, and for years I let my family brand me a failure while I was quietly stitching my life back together, one betrayal at a time. But tonight the silence ends. Before I tell you the rest, I need to know you're with me. Drop a simple "hi" in the comments, let me know this story has found you. Your presence here is the fuel I need. And if my story resonates, please consider subscribing. It means more than you know. Now let me tell you everything. The cabin was groaning, surrendering to the fire's insatiable hunger. Smoke, thick and black, poured through every crack in the walls, and the air was so hot it felt like swallowing glass. I remember the timber roof groaning above me, the sound of a giant beast in its death throes. A lick of flame had already found my left arm, the pain a white-hot scream against my skin, but I refused to let go. My fingers, wrapped tight in the man's jacket collar, were the only anchor he had. My blood dripped from a cut on my forehead onto his face as I dragged him, inch by agonizing inch, across the scorching floorboards. I didn't know his name. I didn't need to. He was alive, just barely, and I was not leaving him behind. The moment we burst through the front door, the fire roared behind us, a furious, cheated monster. My knees buckled, hitting the dirt hard. The mask slipped from my face, and the world went dark. That was the Blackwood Ridge fire of 2017. 8 people rescued. 1 firefighter, me, left unconscious with third-degree burns across her shoulder and left arm. I spent the next 11 months in a grueling battle to relearn the simplest things, like how to hold a damn spoon. I couldn't grip a doorknob, couldn't twist a lid, couldn't close my eyes without the suffocating smell of smoke filling my lungs. By the time my arm was more than just a scarred appendage, I knew with chilling certainty that I could never wear the gear again. So I vanished. No retirement party, no handshakes, no farewells. I didn't even turn in my badge in person. I mailed it from a post office in a different state. Now I live in Austin, Texas. I run survival training workshops, first aid, fire safety, wilderness prep. It's not glamorous, just necessary. I rent a small apartment above a mechanic's shop and keep to myself. Nobody here knows that Chloe Morgan was once on the front page of a newspaper, the hero unknown who collapsed after her final rescue. Nobody knew except for the people who worked so hard to forget. I never told my family. Not about the fire, not the medal, and certainly not about the $300,000 grant the state had quietly awarded me. What was the point? To them, I was just Chloe, the sister who didn't get a real degree, the one who played in the woods for a living. Ethan, my younger brother, was their masterpiece. Dr. Ethan Morgan on the fast track to becoming chief resident at a prestigious Houston hospital. He was handsome, polished, the owner of the loudest, most confident laugh in any room. Dad practically glowed whenever he said Ethan's name. Mom's Facebook profile was a shrine to his achievements. I was the awkward shadow in the family photos, the one introduced with a vague, "This is our daughter, Chloe. She works with kids." Last week, Dad called. "No hello, just a blunt, you still doing that campfire and compass thing?" I took a breath. "I teach emergency evacuation and survival skills, Dad." He chuckled, a sound that always felt like a pat on the head. "Well, I guess someone has to teach the kids how to toast marshmallows properly." I didn't fight back. Not anymore. The part of me that once desperately craved their approval had grown weary. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Inside lay a crumpled, sun-bleached newspaper clipping next to a dull silver medal on a red ribbon. The photo always felt like a punch to the gut. Me, kneeling in the soot, gas mask dangling, my face a mess of ash and terror, cradling the body of the last man I pulled out. I looked broken, terrified, but intensely alive. I stared at it for a long moment, then closed the drawer just like I always did. But the next morning, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. Asterisk Ethan was just named Assistant Chief Resident. We're throwing a dinner for him Saturday night. Dress nicely. And please try not to say anything strange. Asterisk I typed out a reply. I'm not sure I can make it, but my thumb hovered over the send button. I never sent it. I always showed up. The restaurant reeked of garlic and smug satisfaction. It was one of those places with hand-blown glass chandeliers and menus that were too proud to list prices. The whole Morgan clam was there, pressed and polished, glowing under the soft, amber lights. Ethan was holding court near the head of the table, his white shirt impossibly crisp, shaking hands and accepting pats on the back like a politician on election night. I clutched my purse like a shield, hovering just outside the circle of light. Before I could find a place to disappear, Mom intercepted me, a gentle hand on my elbow. "Chloe, sweetheart, there you are. Why don't you sit over there at the far end? By your Aunt Carol and, oh, I think that's your cousin Mark from Dallas." I took my assigned seat. Mark leaned in, already half a glass of wine deep. "Chloe, right? Remind me what you do again? I don't think I saw your name on the med school graduation list last year." I offered a practice smile, one that didn't reach my eyes. "I run a center in Austin that teaches emergency response and survival skills." He blinked, processing. "Oh, that's neat. Like tying knots and putting up tents." He let out a soft laugh. The table joined in, a gentle, polite ripple of amusement. It wasn't cruel, but it stung all the same, a soft slap wrapped in silk. When they brought out Ethan's cake, a two-tier monstrosity decorated with fondant stethoscopes, Mom leaned in close, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "Don't say anything too dramatic tonight, okay? This is Ethan's moment. Let's not make anyone uncomfortable." I just stared at the flickering candles, the reflection of the tiny flames dancing in my eyes. I didn't say a single word. Later that night, back in my small apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sat at the kitchen table. The silence was a relief. I reached into the cupboard above the fridge, pulling out a small, fireproof lockbox. Inside, the envelope from the state of Montana was still sealed. A check for $300,000 for exceptional acts of heroism and bravery. I'd never touched a penny of it. My rent, my groceries, my entire life was funded by teaching kids and adults how to not die. There was no plaque on my wall, no trophy on a shelf. The only person I told the whole truth to was Sophia Rossi. We trained together, fought fires side by side. She'd left the service too, and was now a PE teacher in San Antonio. When I called her after the fire, gasping out the story from a hospital bed, she'd said, "You didn't just walk out of that blaze, Chloe. You dragged the whole damn mountain out with you." I thought of her as I opened a lower cabinet to get a mug for tea. My fingers brushed against something hard and lumpy. I pulled it out. A beat-up old stockpot, blackened on one side. A group of my most difficult students had given it to me for my birthday, painted with neon green letters that read, "Thank you for teaching us how not to die." They'd meant it as a joke, but as I ran my thumb over the messy paint, a quiet laugh escaped my lips. They weren't wrong. A real call from Ethan was a collector's item. He texted, he forwarded memes, but he hadn't actually dialed my number in over 2 years. So when his name flashed on my screen a week after that dinner, I stared at it, certain it was a mistake. "Hey," he said, his voice casual as if we spoke every day. "So listen. The hospital's hosting a big first responders appreciation gala next month to honor frontline workers. I thought, maybe you want to come." I was silent for a beat. "Why?" He hesitated, and in that pause I heard the real reason. "Well, because you do that emergency stuff." It's not medicine, obviously, but it's in the same ballpark. And Mom mentioned maybe you could wear something a little nicer this time. There it was. The hook. My boss is going to be there, he added, so just try to look sharp, okay? For 4 sleepless nights, I tried to convince myself not to go. But on the morning of the gala, I stood before my closet, and my hand reached past all the sensible dresses and sensible blouses, landing on a jacket I hadn't touched in years. The one that still smelled faintly of smoke. The one that made me feel whole. The ballroom was a sea of glittering name tags and champagne flutes. I walked in chin high, ignoring the curious glances at my slightly worn, practical jacket. And then a man walked past me, paused, and turned back. He was lean, with silver hair, and wore a suit with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned it. His eyes scanned my face and then froze. He took a hesitant step forward. "Miss Morgan." I nodded slowly. "I'm Liam Henderson," he said, offering his hand. "You pulled me out of a cabin fire. At Blackwood Ridge. 2017. I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. Even as I was losing consciousness, I remember your eyes." My heart hammered against my ribs. No one had ever recognized me. Not like this. A soft, grateful smile touched his lips. "I've been looking for you for years." An hour later, when the speeches began, I was hiding in the back, partially concealed by a marble pillar. Ethan was at the front table with our parents and his boss. I wasn't expecting anything. I didn't want anything. Then Liam Henderson stepped up to the podium. He began with the usual platitudes about dedication and resilience. But then he paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Tonight," he said, his voice resonating with authority, "I want to acknowledge a different kind of hero." He raised his hand and pointed, not theatrically, but with a steady, unwavering aim, directly at me. "Chloe Morgan is here tonight. In 2017, she saved my life. She pulled me from a burning cabin and then she disappeared. She never sought credit, never asked for a spotlight, but I remember. I remember the severe burns on her arm. I remember her collapsing just after she got me to safety. The room had gone so still it felt like the air had been sucked out of it. She was awarded the state's highest honor for bravery and a grant of $300,000, he continued. I believe she has never used it. Because some heroes don't need a reward. They just do what must be done and then they carry the silence. I felt every single pair of eyes in that room turn to me. Ethan looked like the floor had just vanished from beneath his feet. My mother's hand was clamped over her mouth. I didn't look for my father. I took a small step out from behind the pillar, just enough to be seen. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just gave a single, firm nod. I hadn't come here to be seen, but if the truth had finally decided to speak, I wasn't going to run from it anymore. The room buzzed with whispers. Their version of me, the quiet failure, had just been publicly deleted, and they didn't have the new software. Ethan approached me first, a weird half-smile twitching on his lips. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he asked, as if I'd forgotten to pass along a phone message. "I mean, I heard a firefighter saved him, but I always thought it was a guy." I looked at him, my gaze steady. "You never asked." Just then, Mom appeared, her voice a breathless flurry. $300,000? "Chloe, is that true? Why didn't you tell us?" "Your father and I." I gave her the only truth I had left. Because for the last decade, everything I did was treated like a summer camp hobby. She stared stunned, as if the thought had never once entered her mind. That night, the phone rang. It was her. "Sweetheart," she began, "we were so surprised. I mean, proud, of course. So proud. Your uncle said the Sunday paper even mentioned your name. Why don't you come to dinner this weekend? We all just want to hear your story." Something in her tone felt wrong, too polished, but a tiny, foolish part of me wanted to believe. So I said yes. When I pulled into my parents' driveway that Saturday, a "Welcome Home, Our Hero" banner was hanging on the porch, painted in clumsy red letters. Inside, there were my favorite flowers on the table. My mother leaned forward, her hands clasped. "You know you still have that award money, right? We were just thinking." Ethan's new research proposal could really use some seed funding. For something meaningful. Just a small portion, dear. My blood ran cold. Ethan jumped in, his voice smooth as silk. "Look, I get it. You kept it to yourself. You had your reasons. But now that we all know, you don't have to carry it all alone, right?" I put my spoon down. "You're right. It's my burden. Which means it is also my decision. And it is not a family asset." The air grew thin. A week later, Ethan showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked haggard, holding a bottle of expensive wine he couldn't afford. I need your help, he said, slumping into my armchair. Real help. He looked up, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. I'm in trouble, Chloe. I owe over $120,000. Vegas. Private games. I thought I could win it back. Now they're threatening to go to the hospital board. They'll ruin me. My career, everything. My mouth was dry. You want my money? I'll pay it back. He rushed, I swear. Just give me $50,000. Please. I looked at him, really looked at him, and asked the question that had been buried for years. If I wasn't the woman who pulled a man from a fire, if I was just your broke sister who teaches kids how to tie knots, would you even be here right now? The silence was my answer. I can't help you, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The kindness vanished from his face, replaced by a cold fury. You'll regret this, he hissed. Headlines fade, Chloe. People forget. You'll just be a joke again. It started with a single Reddit post. The headline was a gut punch. My firefighter sister is hoarding a $300,000 award while our family faces ruin. There was no name, but the details were unmistakably mine, twisted into a narrative of greed and cruelty. It went viral. Hero turned cold-hearted hoarder, one comment read. The fallout was swift and brutal. Parents pulled their kids from my workshops. The community center's board called an emergency review. They were polite, but their eyes screamed liability. I was radioactive. The whispers followed me everywhere. Then came the night I heard the crash. I ran into my living room to find the window shattered, glass littering the floor. My small safe was open, files gone. On the floor lay a single sheet of paper with a handwritten message. If you don't know how to share, someone will teach you. The police found no signs of forced entry. I knew who was behind it, but I had no proof. The isolation was suffocating. I stopped sleeping, my hands trembled so badly I could barely hold a cup of coffee. I felt like a ghost in my own home. I hadn't felt this kind of terror since Blackwood Ridge. But this time, the threat wasn't fire, it was family. Then an email landed in my inbox. The subject line, "We owe you more than a medal." It was from Liam Henderson. We met at a quiet corner cafe. He slid a folder across the table. After I saw what was happening to you online, he said, his voice grim, I hired a private investigator. I opened it. Inside were surveillance photos of Ethan letting a strange man into my apartment building. A copy of a bank transfer request with my forged signature. And a copy of the Reddit post with metadata tracing its origin directly to Ethan's work computer. Every shadow of doubt, every ounce of hope that blood meant something, it all evaporated. It was all there in black and white. We can press charges, Liam said gently. Identity theft, fraud, conspiracy. I looked at the evidence, then at him. If I do this, I'm not just exposing Ethan. I'm burning down what's left of my family. He met my gaze, his eyes full of a conviction I hadn't felt in years. No, he said. You're not burning it down. You're finally walking out of the smoke. I took a long, slow breath. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. Okay, I said. No more silence. The courthouse was cold and personal. I wore a simple navy suit, my only armor a slim binder of evidence. Across the room, Ethan sat at the defendant's table, looking small and defeated. Behind him, my parents sat like stone statues, their gazes fixed on the floor. The prosecutor began, and with each piece of evidence, the forged documents, the security footage, the threatening texts, a wave of soft gasps rippled through the courtroom. But the real blow came with the investigator's financial audit. Ethan hadn't just been gambling. He'd created a fake medical charity, soliciting donations from at least 6 of his hospital colleagues, amassing over $200,000 to fund a lifestyle built on lies. When my mother took the stand, she tried to defend him, but when confronted with proof of his fake foundation, she broke down. I didn't know, she sobbed. I didn't know he was this broken. Before the sentencing, the judge asked if I wished to make a statement. I stood, my hands steady. I don't want my brother in prison, I said, my voice clear and strong. I turned to look at Ethan, who finally met my eyes. I used to think that staying silent was a form of peace. But silence isn't peace. It's a slow burn that consumes you from the inside out. Real peace begins with the truth. The verdict came down, a heavy fine, full restitution, a 2-year suspension from medicine, and mandatory psychological rehabilitation. As I walked down the courthouse steps, a woman in a crisp pantsuit approached me. She represented an educational investment group. They'd read about my work and wanted to fund an expansion of my program into underserved rural communities. That night, I finally opened the envelope and looked at the check. It wasn't just money. It was the price of every scar, every nightmare, every moment I thought I wouldn't survive. And I knew exactly what I had to do with it. We called it the Ember Initiative. A place where young people could learn not just to survive, but to find their own strength. Months later, standing on the steps of our new facility, watching kids laugh during a mock rescue drill, I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with fire. Liam Henderson appeared at my side, carrying breakfast sandwiches and a small wooden box. "You pulled me from one burning building," he said softly, "but I think you just did it again in a different way." He handed me the box. Inside was a simple, brushed silver ring with a tiny flame engraved on the inside. "You saved me then," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Now I want to build something with you. A different kind of fire. One that keeps us warm." I didn't answer right away. I just took his hand, my fingers lacing with his. Later, a letter arrived from my parents. No excuses, no justifications. Just 8 words. Asterisk, "We understand now. You didn't need to be a doctor." Asterisk, I folded it and placed it in a drawer next to the old photo of a girl with soot on her face and fire in her eyes. One of the kids ran up to me. "Miss Chloe, are you still scared of fire?" I smiled, kneeling down to meet his gaze. "Everyone's scared of fire," I said. "But once you understand what it burns, you'll know what's truly worth protecting. What we survive doesn't have to define us. What we choose to become in the aftermath, that is everything. The greatest courage is choosing to rebuild right in front of the people who tried to tear you down." If this story moved you, I'd love to hear it. Like, subscribe, and stay with me. The fire is just getting started.